So I did a video about my 135mm lens. It's one of my favorite all-time lenses, the Canon. But Bill has his own version that he's been using, so I want to ask him about that.
Okay, so mine is a 135 made by Rokinon, and this is about half the price of Eric's, and I think this is one of the best values in photography. This lens produces the nicest images out of all of my lenses, and there's a reason I don't use it too often, and that's because it's manual focus. So you shoot 135s often, and you love that lens, and I always say that Eric's images out of that lens are just spectacular. So I started to use this a little bit. So today I'm actually going to put it on the camera. I'm going to take some pictures of Eric, and I'm actually going to drop them into the video here so you can see why a lens like this might be something you want to put into your kit. Now, why do you love it so much?
I love the focal length. I really love it. It's one of the oldest prime lenses that I had. I had that lens, the Canon version, for like 10 years, and I used it so much that I actually wore out the focusing motor inside, and I had to actually replace it with a new one. For an L lens, a Canon L lens, is relatively inexpensive. It's less than $1,000. Like Bill said, this one's probably about half that. But the focal length is just really such a nice focal length, especially for something at a little bit more of a distance, like street photography, portraits, things like that, where you want to have a little bit of distance and you want to be able to isolate a subject and blur the background. This focal length is really perfect for that.
Wait till you see how soft the background is when I take some shots here with this lens. Now, this lens actually connected to my Nikon D750. There's a focus confirmation chip in this lens, and on the bottom left corner of my viewfinder, it'll actually show me when I'm in focus. A little light lights up when it's actually in focus. So it makes using this lens easy. Now, I don't know if the Canon version does the exact same thing. I know with Rokinon lenses, some of them do, some of them don't. So it's something you're gonna have to do a little research on. The Nikon versions usually do. You can nail focus every time, as long as it does take a little bit longer. Like yours is autofocus,
Mine's
you just shoot, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so this one's a little more deliberate. You have to take your time with it. All right, so when we come back, I'll have my lens on the camera, and I'm gonna take some pictures of Eric. Okay, so I have my model all set, and he's ready to go. So I have it on my D750. It's not a huge lens. So when you look at it on the camera, you know, it's not tremendously huge. It feels very good. It's a solid lens. And I'm gonna take a couple of images, and I'm gonna let Eric use it and take a couple of images of me and see what he thinks about using a manual focus lens like this. Now, you definitely have to be more deliberate. You can't just fire off, there's no autofocus. And I want to get the focus right because I want his face and his eyes to be sharp. Okay, so now I'm gonna let Eric, try shooting with it and see what he thinks.
It's gonna confirm. So I'm gonna look for the confirmation at the bottom left. Which one is, the whole thing's focused, it's fine. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. It's gonna light up though when it's in focus?
It'll be a circle.
Oh, okay. There it is. Almost. Yeah, you gotta really take your time. Yeah, you gotta be real deliberate, like Bill said about it. But if it works, once it's in focus, it's in focus. Especially if you're taking a static portrait like that, you don't have to worry about people moving around or anything. The focus indicator for the manual lens works pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I would want to use a lens like this if I had to just kind of wing it and guess it, but when you get that confirmation, it really, you feel confident in the shot. And this is a lens I use a lot. On our last trip, I'm going to drop a couple of images in here. I took a picture of my wife here on Main Street. She was getting an ice cream right in front of the ice cream parlor there. And there was also some other times that I've used it, and I always love the separation between whatever you're shooting and the background. I think that's the real magic in this 135 focal length.
Right, yeah, the 2.0 aperture really gives you a shallow depth of field and really blurs the background very nicely. And it's a great focal length for that. It's not super long telephoto where you have to be, 50 feet away from somebody. You can see we're relatively close, but you're not right on top of somebody. And it gives it a nice look. It gives it a nice compression between the subject and the background, and you're not distorting it. If you get really close, to somebody taking a portrait, it kind of distorts things a little bit. This way you kind of set back and it keeps all the features nice.
And I mean, compared to a 70 to 200, I mean, I love my 70 to 200, and for shooting portraits, that's my go-to lens. But there is a definitely unique look to this lens for portraits. You know, if you take the time to use it, I think. You know, it's an awesome lens.
Yeah, definitely. I've been using that focal length 135 2.0 for probably 15 years, and I haven't gotten tired of it.
Right. So this lens right now, you can get it for about $469, between $450 and $500. That's brand new. If you can find a used copy, I mean, to me, this is one of the best bargains in photography. I mean, how does it feel to you?
It feels great. Yeah, it feels nice and solid.
It feels like a professional lens.
Yes, definitely.
There's no plastic. It's got a metal barrel on it. It's just a rock solid lens. It's just getting used to the manual focus, which is hard for me because I'm always running and gunning. And you know, I know you're the same way.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any manual focus lenses?
I do. I have
Which
a
one?
couple of manual focus. My wide angle 15 millimeters of manual focus. That's the only manual focus that I use. But now on my Canon R, on my mirrorless body, there's the same thing. It's something similar to that, where there's a manual focus indicator in there. But that one's even easier to use because it's right in the middle of the screen, and it shows you basically how far away you are from being right in focus. So yeah, really, I manually focus with that. But with a wide angle lens like that, focus really isn't as important as it is with a telephoto like this.
Right. This, you need that confirmation chip, because unless you're spot on, it doesn't give you the confirmation.
Right.
So there's two arrows, and it bounces between the two arrows. And when you have focus, a little circle lights up. And you know, it's a very good indicator that you're in focus, but it's sometimes a little tricky to get.
Yep.
But if you're looking for a lens that's going to kind of make your photography look a little bit different, and you don't have $1,000 to spend on an autofocus focus version, I think the Nikon, like 105, it's even more money, and like they're very expensive lenses. So Canon's is not as bad,
right?
But it's still more than double the price of this one,
right? But it's great for portraits. It's great for capturing details of things and really getting close to things without having to, you know, get right up to things. Great for street photography, things like that.
Yeah. And one other thing, when you shoot with a lens that opens up to 2.0 aperture or 1.8 or 1.4, and you're shooting portraits during the daytime, we're in a shady spot here, but always make sure you have an ND filter, like a 3-stop ND filter with you, so you can shoot wide open. Now, there were times when I was shooting on my last trip where I was full sun and I had to throw the ND filter on, otherwise I just couldn't shoot wide open and get that depth of field that I wanted. So with a lens like this, make sure you get an ND filter to go with it, because that's going to let you use it the way you want to with this aperture and focal length.
Yep.
Okay, so that's just a quick review of this lens, and I'll drop the pictures in. We'll see you in the next one.
Yep.